There is a moment, quiet and unremarkable, that most people experience almost daily, and yet almost no one admits it out loud. It is the moment right after someone criticizes you, or ignores you, or takes credit for something you built, and you feel that familiar heat rise in your chest. Your jaw tightens. Your mind starts drafting the perfect response, the perfect comeback, the perfect explanation that will finally make them understand. You replay the moment over and over, long after it has ended, long after the other person has forgotten it entirely. And in that replay you are not living. You are being lived by an emotion you did not choose and cannot seem to release. This is not weakness in the way we usually think of weakness. It is not laziness or fear or lack of intelligence. It is something quieter and far more dangerous, because it disguises itself as passion, as sensitivity, as being someone who simply cares deeply. But underneath that disguise is a brutal truth that almost no one wants to hear. If your peace of mind can be stolen by a stranger's opinion, a rival's success, or a single unkind word, then you do not yet own yourself. Someone else does. And they didn't even have to ask for the keys. This is not a modern problem, though it feels distinctly modern in how relentlessly it is exploited. 2,000 years before algorithms were designed to hijack your attention, and outrage was engineered into a business model, there were men who understood this exact vulnerability with terrifying precision. They were not therapists, they were not influencers. They were emperors, slaves, soldiers, and statesmen, living in an empire far more brutal than anything we will ever face, and they built an entire discipline around a single uncomfortable idea, that almost everything which torments us is not actually happening to us. It is happening in us, in the space between the event and our reaction to it. And that space, however small it feels in the heat of the moment, is the only territory a human being ever truly owns. They called this philosophy Stoicism, and it was never meant to be cold or emotionless, despite what the word has come to mean in casual conversation. It was meant to be a kind of quiet warfare against the tyranny of one's own impulses. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth during his reign, spent his nights writing to himself, not for an audience, not for legacy, but simply to remind himself, again and again, of a truth he was terrified of forgetting. That other people's actions were not his concern, only his own response to them was. He wrote it not because he had mastered it, but precisely because he hadn't, and knew he never fully would. That is the first thing worth understanding about this ancient discipline. It was never a finished state. It was a daily practice of catching yourself in the act of losing yourself. At the center of this practice lies what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. And it is, even now, one of the most quietly devastating ideas ever put into words. It says that everything that exists can be divided into two categories, and only two. There are things within your power, namely your judgments, your intentions, your effort, your character. And there is everything else, which includes other people's opinions of you, the outcomes of your labor, the weather of the world, and the weather of other people's moods. The tragedy of most human suffering, the Stoics argued, is that we pour our entire emotional lives into the second category, the one we were never given authority over, while neglecting the first, the only place where real power has ever existed. You cannot control whether someone insults you. You cannot control whether your effort is rewarded fairly or ever seen at all. But you retain, always, the power to decide what that moment means to you and what you will do next. That decision, small as it seems, is the entire battlefield. Understanding this changes something fundamental in how a person moves through the world, because it means the goal is no longer to prevent bad things from happening. Bad things will happen regardless, to the wise and the foolish alike, to emperors and to beggars. The goal becomes something far more achievable and far more powerful, to become the kind of person whom bad things cannot easily unsettle. This is where the discipline of silence enters, and it is often misunderstood as passivity, but it is nothing of the sort. Strategic silence is not the silence of someone with nothing to say. It is the silence of someone who understands that most reactions, most explanations, most attempts to be understood in the moment cost more than they are worth. The ancient Stoics prized restraint, not because they lacked ambition, but because they knew that ambition spoken too early or defended too loudly becomes vulnerable to sabotage, to envy, to the corrosive attention of people who did not earn the right to witness your unfinished work. There is a particular strength in the person who can absorb an insult without needing to answer it, who can achieve something remarkable without needing to announce it, who moves through the world creating far more than they explain. That kind of person becomes very difficult to wound because they have given the world so little surface area to strike. This restraint is not possible without its twin discipline, the mastery of impulse. Every emotional reaction you feel is, at its root, an impulse asking to be obeyed immediately. The angry reply, the extra drink, the hour lost scrolling instead of building, the decision made in a flash of wounded pride, all of these are the mind surrendering to its first instinct rather than its considered judgment. The Stoics practiced something almost unthinkable by modern standards, deliberately choosing discomfort, deliberately delaying pleasure, not out of self-punishment, but as training. A soldier does not build endurance on the day of battle. He builds it in the years before, in the mud and the cold and the repetition nobody sees. Self-discipline works the same way. Every time you resist an impulse that offers instant relief in exchange for long-term regret, you are not simply avoiding a mistake. You are making a deposit into a version of yourself that will, one day, need to be strong when it matters most. And perhaps nowhere is that strength tested more than in how a person responds to judgment. Because praise and blame are two sides of the very same trap. The person addicted to approval and the person devastated by criticism are, underneath, suffering from the identical wound. They have outsourced their sense of worth to an audience that was never qualified to determine it. The Stoics called this an obsession with reputation, and they treated it as one of the most dangerous forms of slavery a free person could choose for themselves. Epictetus, born into actual slavery and later becoming one of history's most influential teachers, understood something that most free men never grasp, that a man who needs the crowd's approval to feel whole has built his entire identity on a foundation he does not control, which means he is never truly free at all. The antidote is not arrogance, and it is not indifference to others. It is measuring yourself instead against your own private standard of character, quietly, consistently, whether anyone is watching or not. When your worth is decided internally, criticism becomes information instead of injury, and praise becomes pleasant instead of necessary. None of this, however, means a life free of hardship. If anything, it guarantees the opposite. The Stoics did not seek comfort because they understood that comfort makes a person brittle, while difficulty, faced correctly, makes a person almost unbreakable. This is the heart of what they called turning obstacles into fuel, and later thinkers would call it amor fati, the love of one's fate, not merely accepting what happens, but training yourself to see every setback as the exact material your character needed in order to be forged. The rejection becomes the reason you refine your craft. The betrayal becomes the reason you finally learn discernment. The loss becomes the reason you learn what truly mattered all along. This is not blind optimism. It is a deliberate act of reframing, done again and again, until it becomes instinct rather than effort. What all of this points toward, in the end, is not a philosophy of hardness for its own sake, but a philosophy of ownership. Ownership of your attention, your reactions, your ambitions, your definition of success, and ultimately, your peace. The brutal truth is that most people spend their entire lives reacting to a world they never chose, governed by opinions they never asked for, wounded by people who will not remember the wound tomorrow. But there has always been another way to live, quieter, steadier, and far more powerful than it first appears. It does not announce itself. It does not seek applause. It simply builds, day after day, a person who can no longer be shaken by what was never theirs to control in the first place. That is not weakness. That was never weakness. It is, and always has been, the only real strength worth having.